Hey everyone, welcome back to AI IRL, a podcast from Carnegie Mellon's AI Institute for Societal Decision Making. I'm your host, Ariel Huang, a cognitive science and HCI undergrad here at CMU. And that's enough about me, because today we're joined by Jamie McGovern, Program Director of Carnegie Mellon University's Master of Applied Data Science program, and someone who has spent years working at the intersection of data, technology, and business decision making. So, as AI transforms everything from data analysis to hiring practices, the role of the data scientist is changing faster than ever. So, what does it mean to be industry ready today? What skills matter most when AI can write code, generate visualizations, and automate tasks that once took hours? And where do uniquely human qualities like judgment, trust, and relationships fit into an AI driven future? We'll explore all of that and more, from applied data science and the future of work to the lessons organizations keep relearning every time a new technology wave arrives. So, welcome, Jamie. We're so excited to have you
I
here today.
Thank you.
Yeah, can you tell us a little about your background, how you're involved with AI SDM?
Sure. So I spent about 20 years in industry before I joined the university. Technical and strategic consulting. I worked a lot for multinationals and think broadly like digital transformation. I did a lot of work in human capital space and people process technology. I later ran an analytics boutique, did data science work to help organizations get signal from their data or help inform decisions. 6 years ago, I joined Carnegie Mellon. So I'm on the faculty here in the Department of Statistics and Data Science. As you mentioned, I run the MADS program, and that's Master of Science in Applied Data Science. That is a 1 year professional program for people who want to work in industry and data centric careers. Um, I was introduced to the AISDM a few years ago. My students did a capstone project. We looked at improving spatial alignment in imagery between satellite and drone images for disaster response. I
Wow.
continued working with the AISDM as part of their educational and workforce development team. So think a lot of community outreach, educational modules, and workshops. I
Right,
did one in the fall around navigating the labor market, kind of using some of the newer tools to help in the job search.
right.
Um, I build and deliver AI literacy programs for some of AISDM's corporate partners. On
Very
top of my,
important.
yeah, my day job was still kind of teaching and running the MADS program.
Wow, amazing. Yeah. That sounds that's great. Can you tell us a little more about what applied data science actually is? Because I feel like I have an idea when I hear it, but
Okay.
from the expert.
Well, I start with the converse. So think of like the theoretical side. A lot of what the PhDs, for example, do here in the department, we're looking to advance the field of knowledge.
Right.
So we're looking at the mathematical foundations or algorithmic efficiency, statistical validity of models, and trying to create new tools and techniques. On the applied side, how do we use those to answer business challenges, to help inform decisions? So we're taking kind of what we've developed on the theory side, we're trying to apply it to the same problems we've been dealing with for 100 plus years.
Right. I see. Is there a misconception that you see people making about applied data science a lot?
There's a few. So let me kind of think through this. I think a real common one tends to be that people think like data science is a straight output and making decisions in business. Um, it's just another tool at our disposal to help inform human judgment, subject matter expertise, and trying to find patterns or signals in large data sets that maybe aren't intuitive or easy to see as an individual. Um, I think that uh, data science is seen as maybe transactional, like something we
Hmm.
do and now we've done it and we can use that going forward. The world changes, so
Right.
we're constantly trying to improve or validate our models or incorporate changes in the world. It's really kind of driven from the business side, like what problem are we trying to address? What question are we trying to answer? Can we use more data to help us understand something that might not be intuitive so that we can make better decisions for whatever our strategic goals are. So that's kind of how I think of it. But it's not magic pixie dust. It's just another tool at our disposal to help us be more efficient, more
Yeah.
effective, improve our products, understand the efficacy of what we're doing. It's just another tool in the tool belt.
Yeah. I think that's very similar to just the concept of AI, right?
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
just kind of like the latest and greatest set of tools that we have, and figuring out like how do we use them to drive some advantage or to be more efficient, as opposed to it's just going to solve all our problems.
Right. There are no shortcuts.
No, no shortcuts in life.
Yeah. So going deeper into applied data science, what is the MADS program at Carnegie Mellon?
Sure. The MADS program, so this is a 9-month applied professional program. So this is
Mhm.
for people who want to work in data-centric jobs
Uh-huh.
as data scientists, data analysts, data engineers, AI researchers, machine learning engineers. The terminology will change over time. I think if we go back about 20 years where we really started to have data at scale in industry, I talked about in consulting, think a big digitization wave. I'm old enough that when I started, a lot of processes were still manual, paper based. We moved them into systems.
Right.
We built all these best of breed silos that helped us be more effective or efficient for this individual process. Well, they didn't talk to each other. And we went and integrated all the systems. So now that we have data from all the different parts of the business that we can um, relate, and now how do we drive decisions now that we have this data for some type of competitive advantage? That's generally what happened across the world. And those were statisticians 20 years ago. And
Right.
then data science became kind of its own term. They were data scientists. And then machine learning engineers, to try to be more specific or descriptive, as we try to kind of narrow exactly what the signals to our candidates in the job market, what skills are we looking for, what we'd be doing on the job. So in the MADS program, we're a generalist program. We're not specifically for one sector or one industry. And part of what you would get when you come to a program like this is some exposure to understand. I don't think anybody grows up when they're little and thinks, I want to work in industrial manufacturing when I get older. But a lot of that's asymmetric information. You don't know what they do. Maybe you'd
Right.
be very interested in it. So we'll expose you to all the variety of things you can do with data science and industry, help you build the skills that will qualify you for positions, help you
Yeah.
understand how to navigate that job search, and hopefully, identify the right two-way fit. There's
Yeah.
someone that's interested in my skills, my aptitudes, but also a domain that I'm interested in. I'm going to do a better job when I'm authentically, like, really interested in the work. You're going to spend the
Right.
majority of your waking hours doing something. You want to do something that you're legitimately interested in, where they value your skill set. You can grow your career, grow your skill set, become more valuable over time, help kind of drive results for the business. So it's industry valued competencies, trying to prepare people for those types of positions. And if you think about like what a data scientist needs to have, you're going to continue to learn and grow your entire career.
Yeah.
Um,
Sign me up for the program.
you want to get your foot in the door somewhere and start to get the opportunity to learn more about how this business works. If you want to go
Right.
into quant finance, I need to learn how the market works. What are our goals? What types of questions do we answer? You're going to learn a lot of that in the job. To get in the door, what type of skills do I need for a data science role? I need to be able to work with modern tools and tech. So
Right.
statistical computing, kind of one of the pillars of the program. You get exposure and some training in what those tools are and how to use them. Important one, data analysis. What am I actually coding? What is it doing? It's the
Right.
math and probability. We're well past the days of I will tell you exactly what I want you to code and what model you use. I want to give you a general business problem. What will happen to the price of natural gas if there's a blockade in the Middle East and the supply is cut? That's a broad problem that we can use data to try to predict. You have to pick the right method. So you have to understand the math and probability of all the techniques you can use and understand use cases, pros and cons.
Mhm.
Do I have messy data? Do I have sparse data? What might be the most appropriate technique to use in this case? And then kind of the third piece is I have to communicate that in a way that people listen.
Right.
So I have to be able to persuade and inform with various levels of sophistication. You're not just going to work with other data scientists. You may be, predicting our book of business and our sales pipeline and working with a stakeholder at an executive level who hasn't taken a math course since high school. So I have to tell them this is why you should trust my results and what I did, what's actually happening here in my modeling and analysis. So it's the statistical computing, the modern tools and tech, the data analysis, the math and probability, understanding what I'm coding, and the professional skills, being able to communicate, being able to collaborate and work with others. We don't kind of work just by ourselves. Someone can give me a problem and I'll come back in a month and give you an answer. I work with teams of people, some are co-located, some are across the globe. I have to communicate across different working styles to
Right.
deal with conflict, and then I have to be able to present and document my work in a way that's interpretable and can be understood. So it's stack computing, data analysis, professional skills. That's how I usually talk about the program when I do like info sessions for candidates.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like what you said about job titles and like job skills, like that really resonated because I think a lot of students maybe kind of get stuck on like a job title, right? But
Yeah,
we don't realize that so many of these skills like overlap in different industries and domains. And yeah,
yeah, absolutely.
yeah,
I've learned a lot being part of the department and part of the university here. I can't
yeah,
remember what I thought when I was coming out of school. It was so long ago. But I think, we have the opportunity when the students are with us here to maybe broaden the perspective on what makes a good career, what makes a good job. I talk to the students in my classes. I think
yeah,
kind of the modern social contract for work, I want a position where I find the work interesting, where I'm treated respectfully and where I'm getting the opportunity to develop. So increasing my
yeah,
value over time, which will create more opportunities for me in the future. That's kind of the sweet spot instead of working backwards from what is the hot company or name here, where I don't understand what I'm going to do. I may not enjoy it. I'm going to spend the bulk of my waking hours doing it. Are the people a good fit for me? Is the
100%.
business aligned with my values? It's a broader question to answer than just go for the latest shiny object or whatever is in vogue at the moment, because that changes. The world changes all the time.
Especially now.
Yes.
Feels like every week.
Yes. Rapid rate of change.
Yeah. So data scientists, they're now using AI tools, right? For,
Sure.
speaking of changes, for processes like transforming raw data, writing code.
Mhm.
What has AI changed about the type of skills that a data scientist would or should prioritize the development of?
I think if we just look at it as kind of an evolution of the tools available to a data
Yeah,
scientist, because it's again not like a silver bullet that is going to solve all of our problems. The problems tend to be kind of people problems, or asking the right types of questions, or interpreting information.
right,
The tools, with various use cases, will allow us to be more productive, maybe to get more done in a shorter amount of time, can accelerate some of the work, can help us maybe polish some of our presentation, but they don't substitute for the critical thinking.
yeah,
That really differentiates what are considered like high achieving data scientists. So it's just kind of another tool in our tool belt. What's changing in the labor market is there's
mhm,
an expectation more and more from industry that a viable candidate doesn't just have the stat computing, data analysis, and professional skills, but also some AI literacy.
right,
So on the data science side, I should be able to understand what these tools are actually doing, so I can kind of help determine the best use cases. And they're not magic boxes. There's no critical thinking there. These large language models are token predictions, looking at
right,
patterns. And we have a large corpus of everything we've ever written because we all put it online. We trained our models to say what is the most probable response for this type of query or prompt.
mhm,
Uh, but it's also AI literacy in what viable use cases are. How can I use this to be more productive? I wouldn't
right,
take it that give it to the AI and say answer this question, um, because there's a lot of nuance subject matter expertise, critical thinking that's going to inform things like my method selection.
Right.
But I might be able to use that tool to help me get a model up quicker, to help me think of edge cases, to help me in my testing or my documentation. So, AI literacy in terms of being familiar with how to use the tools effectively is
Right.
something that we're seeing kind of more organizations have as a baseline expectation for candidates.
Yeah. I've always wondered, because I feel like AI literacy, it has a different definition for like different domains and companies, because I feel that for other fields, um, the expectation of being an AI native means that like you put the you you have the AI do the work and then you kind of supervise as the human, right? Like you kind of press buttons. But it sounds like for applied data science, it's more you you make the decisions, right? And then the AI might refine it.
Yeah, I think, and it's also being able to validate those outputs. So if you don't
Right.
understand the math and probability, and I put something into my tool to try to help accelerate or get to a baseline model faster, can I look at this and kind of identify the flaws or opportunities for improvement? There's
Mhm.
many different ways to answer the same type of question,
Right.
right? If I want to predict something, is it going to rain next week? And
Mhm.
is someone going to default on their credit card balance?
Right.
Um, there's lots of different methods or models that I can use that will give me an answer.
Right.
Um, I have to kind of use my expertise to understand in this case with this data or what exactly I'm trying to address here. Are the results reasonable? Are there different approaches that I might take? Are there things that I should do with the data and processing? How should I present this? And do I understand in validating this model the accuracy, and how authentic do I think the prediction actually is?
Right.
Those are all kind of still human-based skills. So that human in the loop is very important. Um, but I think a lot of organizations will tell you they want candidates who are familiar with how to use the tools and kind of
Mhm.
incorporate them into what we would traditionally do in data science before AI. Right?
Right.
It's understand the problem, refine it, be able to work and clean our data,
Mhm.
to be able to understand when we make recommendations, our confidence in the results. This is all probability based.
Yeah. Makes sense. So it seems that we're agreed on kind of the dynamic between humans and AI. But let's go into hiring, right?
Sure.
Like how has hiring changed with AI?
So first I would say like hiring's changed significantly in my lifetime.
Yeah.
So we're already kind of in a process that's been heavily in flux. If you
Hmm.
think about this, going back to when I came out of school to apply for a job, I needed to show up and talk to a person, hand them a piece of paper. So I needed to understand there was an opportunity. I needed to have a venue to kind of express my interest.
Right.
And we worked with kind of in a more local area. The explosion of the internet and technology and adoption of personal computing and phones. Now I can go get a bot and apply to every job on LinkedIn by sundown today, and people
Yeah.
will do that. So the volume of applications is shot through the roof. At the same time, the era of do more with less. We use technology to kind of make business more efficient, especially for something like human capital, which is a cost center.
Right.
No matter how great I do in finding and hiring the right people, doesn't return a single dollar to my shareholders. That's not where I'm generating revenue or profit. It's just on the cost side. So I want to be efficient in that process and do
Right.
that as cost effectively as possible. We have fewer people reviewing those resumes while the volumes have gone up because we can use technology to help us in process automation, to kind of help us with some of the more transactional steps in that process. So if I'm looking to hire an experienced data scientist for my team lead, I may want someone with 5 years experience who's previously managed a team.
Mhm.
And I get 10,000 applications and I have a team of five now to look through these applications. I can't read 10,000 resumes. I don't have the time. and it's too costly. I can bring in an army of people and we'll spend the next 2 months just kind of reviewing this line by line. I'm going to use process automation, robotic process automation, the tools that we've built over the last 25 years to take those applicants and maybe put them in different clusters for me. Here are people that meet certain criteria. Here are people based on how I've written the job description
Hmm.
are a higher fit or match. And now I've got a subset of filter to be able to look at my higher probability candidates.
Right.
So now my recruiters will take a quick 30-second glance at that list of that resumes and try to down select to get to a smaller cohort of candidates that we can put through the ringer of technical screens and behavioral screens and meeting with a data scientist to answer probability questions. Hiring is always a risk. The risk
Yeah.
that I bring you in here and you don't understand what we do and you don't like it and you leave in 3 months.
Right.
Or I misinterpreted your skill set. You don't have the skills that I'm looking for. It's a mismatch and not a fit. I'm back to the drawing board and doing this again. I'm trying to mitigate those risks. And I've got a limited set of information. It's not like I sat next to you for 6 months. I know who you are. I know your working style. I have to try to infer this from a piece of paper that you've submitted online. I'm going to use some of those tools to try to help me with the heavy lift of getting through the volume, get down to a more manageable size of candidates to review. And that's kind of like what we've seen the process evolve over the last couple of decades. Now with AI, it's just kind of stepping up what's happening in each of those rounds. There's newer
Right.
organizations that will say, as opposed to just maybe like 15 years ago, we'll just do some keyword matching. And I'm looking for people who've got Python experience.
Hmm.
Well, a computer can tell me pretty accurately if you've got Python in your resume. Maybe that will filter my subset. There are more advanced tools now that may tell me someone with your background, training, education is more comparable to someone that we've seen with more mobility upward in their career. You might be a better long-term fit with potential for leadership or management. I can get more nuanced in what you've written and try to translate that into what I have in my job description. And that's kind of where we're seeing AI in the human capital process
Hmm.
to try to help kind of draw more nuanced signal out of those resumes to help with that workload and to help us identify potential and fit. And then on the candidate side, I think it's a big black box.
Yeah.
Candidates are unsure of what's happening. All I hear or all I read online, the market's terrible, and I get put through 20 different rounds, and I get no responses from organizations, but they don't understand kind of what's happening on the other side.
Right.
I may create, there were times where I created a requisition to hire someone. I didn't yet have approval, but once I got the approval, I needed to move fast, so I may have started the process.
Yeah.
The candidate perspective, you just see, I applied last week, I was a great fit, and I haven't heard yet. Well, you might hear in another month. The
Yeah.
other thing is, I'm managing risk. I may need a position, I may need a new hire in the next 2 weeks. I post it in the first 3 days, I've got 2,000 candidates. Well, I might filter and use my tools to identify the highest potential candidates and start the process there. But
Right.
maybe the 10 people that I've down selected and I'll put through higher cost rounds of recruiting, like talking to people where I have to pull someone off work. Maybe they're not going to be a fit, or maybe they'll turn this down. So I'll leave that requisition up.
Hmm.
And you'll apply 2 weeks after I've posted it and say, I was the perfect candidate. I'm everything that they were looking for. And I didn't even get picked for the interview. It was the timing. You didn't know.
Yeah.
There's also nuances in the process based on how the systems were built and designed
Mhm.
for applicant tracking. I may want to transfer someone who worked for me in the past, who already works at our company. Well, I have to create a new seat to move them under me in the org chart and our HR system. That may have triggered a requisition. Now we've
Mhm.
got 5,000 people that applied. I'm not looking at anybody. I know who's getting that job already. It's an internal transfer.
Right.
There's all these types of kind of cases and asymmetric information. So you don't see what's happening on the other side of the table through this process. But it can be confusing. It can feel kind of very arduous. I have a lot of empathy for people in the job market at the moment because the process has gotten more and more complex and less interpretable
For sure.
over time. But it's not all doom and gloom. I think the better that you understand the process, the more effectively you can navigate it. So it's everything from, how I present my credentials and my qualifications, and that's kind of like the technical side of how will I navigate what's happening with the application tracking system parsers and the match scores and how that works. Um, but there's the kind of domain side too, and really understanding what are organizations looking for, what makes a good candidate or for someone coming out of school for an entry level, graduate level data scientist. It's not just that I have 20 deep learning projects on my resume, so I must be a great fit. Looking for the critical thinking skills, the understanding of the math and probability. How can I signal and demonstrate that in my
Mhm.
experience? So how, the experiences that I generate to put on my resume, how I create my resume, how I submit, how I navigate this process. There's a lot of kind of moving pieces to track and understand. And the best thing that we can do, I think, is help people understand how this process works.
Yeah, that's really interesting because like you said with like if someone knows Python, right? Like the computer can see Python on the resume, but skills are harder to kind of show, and like for the AI to pinpoint right away, it kind of shows like throughout the entire resume. So that's a very human element of it. And I think that students will be comforted to know that like a lot of this process isn't up to them,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
their experiences.
I think really kind of decoding the job descriptions to understand what we're asking for
Right.
uh, is important because then you can present a version. And this is, again, maybe related to how the process has changed in my lifetime. The
Yeah,
resume used to be, this is everything about me.
right.
This kind of represents the totality of who I am. In the modern world, we want to create more of a specific version for this position. You're asking for certain skills or experiences I want to present to you because now I know like the limitations are your time and attention. I need to be kind of direct and concise to be able to present how I fit what you're asking for in my
Right.
version of the resume for this specific position. So if someone that comes through a program like mine, Mads,
Mhm.
you can be a data analyst and do a lot of work talking to stakeholders, communicating results. You can be a data engineer and spend a lot of time on the technical side. Um, the profiles of an engineer versus an analyst would highlight different things in the same experiences. The
Mhm.
project I worked on for the analyst, maybe I want to highlight the stakeholders I presented to, the
Mhm.
requirements gathering sessions I've done. That'll be in the job description. I'm going to be scored in my match kind of based on how I fit, how they've written this position up. But I want to highlight those because I understand this position might be more stakeholder facing.
Right.
In the engineering side, I really want to get in depth on the tools that I've worked with. What do they care about? Like what skills are they going to kind of expect me to have, or they value more?
Mhm.
I'll highlight more of the tech stack that I worked on, my contributions to the code base, my ability to do version control.
Mhm.
Maybe a lot less important on the analyst side, a lot more important on the engineering side. It's the same common set of experiences. So a lot of students that I'll work with will create different versions of their applications for different types of positions. Um, it's more labor intensive. Right? I don't
Right.
just have a single resume that I can plaster out and see what sticks. I need to really read, comprehend, understand what I'm seeing, what the companies are looking for, and present the version of myself that matches the ask, essentially.
100%. Yeah. So, well, we've seen AI on both sides, right, for applying and hiring. So, after seeing organizations maybe adopt and maybe fail to adopt technology, what patterns do you see repeating now with AI that companies haven't learned from?
Well, I think the challenges with maybe call them like broad challenges to change in general. And as humans, we're not uh, always enamored by change, right? We get used to certain processes or ways of doing things. So there's adoption challenges because I have to maybe learn new skills or get outside my comfort zone. And that's common to any new type of technology. I think
Right.
it's not that dissimilar from when everything moved from paper-based processes onto workstations and computers in the office. The process has been the same. I have to process accounts payable and get invoices out to our customers. That process has been around before and after tech.
Right.
It was a very manual process. And then I used technology to be able to enable and track it. And now maybe I can take some more of the less strategic parts of that job that are more rote, that maybe just require I do the same 3 or 4 steps each time, and try to use the modern tools and tech or the AI to help me be more efficient or automate pieces of those so that I can focus on the ones that require kind of my cognitive power and my strategic perspective or my subject matter expertise. So I think there's always kind of user adoption challenges with any new type of technology. The confounding problem is that it's changing very quickly.
Right.
No, these are not mature, solid tools that are not changing. They're changing constantly. We're seeing kind of new capabilities being added to the existing tools. We're seeing new versions of the tools that are being promoted over time. So you're kind of working with a moving target
Right.
and being able to stay abreast of the constant changes and to figure out kind of what the viable use cases are is a challenge for anyone at the moment. Some of that seems to be trial and error in business. Let's see how this works. So we'll pull back. We'll try to be aggressive because the upside is there to be more efficient or more effective or more accurate. But there's risk associated too.
Yeah.
And, it's not a one size fits all. I have to think about the nuance of what's my risk tolerance in this specific process. Maybe this is one where automation is not necessarily a plus because this is very high value for us or critical for keeping our customer satisfaction high. I want
Hmm.
more of the in the loop there as I have less tolerance for issues. Something like approving expense reports. I've got a process that's established offline. It says I can just approve it if it's under 500 and I can make exception approval here. Well, if you knew the history of everything I had ever approved in my entire career, you could probably predict pretty accurately whether I'm going to approve this exception or not.
Right.
Maybe that's one where I'm more comfortable leaning into AI because that will buy me more time to focus on that strategic kind of higher value work. But
Right.
but I think those are the challenges that everyone's dealing with at the moment and kind of figuring out what the optimal use cases are. Um, and it's a moving target because the tools are changing over time.
100%. Yeah. I was talking to like someone who to a painter the other day, and I was talking to her about the art industry because with I'm sure like every other domain it's changing a lot. And she was talking about how, you had people making like wagon wheels, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we don't do that anymore, but now those people might be making cars. So I think it's a lot about finding the common thread of the work, like the
Yeah,
essence of the work, which is what you
yeah,
were talking about.
yeah,
But the form that it takes can change for sure.
yeah. It always needs to be grounded in kind of the same questions we've always asked, like what are we actually trying to accomplish here, not
Right.
just what we can do. There's lots of nice things, nice parlor tricks I can do with the AI tools and the LLMs. That's not a question or a challenge. What am I trying to
Right.
figure out? How can I grow my business? How can I take some of the cost out of the production of my product? How can I reach new markets? How can I be more effective? How can I maximize the value of my workforce? These are the same problems that we've been, working through for decades, and they're just things that we'll continue to work on because they're not one and done, right? They're never
Right.
ending. They migrate as the world changes. Just how do we most effectively use the all the tools that are disposable, and that's what I think we're seeing broadly across the world.
Yeah. Very insightful. Yeah. Um, Maybe we touched on this a little bit before, but what would you say is like the biggest takeaway that you've gotten from working with just at the intersection of people and data and organizations?
Uh, I think that it's still like a very human process, right? It still always goes back to it's not a magic silver bullet, pixie dust to solve all our problems.
Yeah.
The humans are integral in the subject matter expertise, the nuance, the strategy. Where do we want to take our business? Or even you as a worker, what do I want to do in my career?
Mhm.
Um, what does my employer value? How do I
Yeah.
generate business for the organization that I'm part of? And understanding that the A is not going to help you understand that. All right.
Right.
That's something that you're going to use these tools to help maybe achieve some of the goals that you set. Um, but it takes that, you know, the human thought process, right? Your nuanced ability to work through a problem and understand it and to communicate and talk to others. It's not an individual activity, right?
Yeah.
These are group activities. We're part of an organization with many people. Trying to
Right.
get everyone to row in the same direction is always challenging. If you've ever worked on a big project, the fact that we have a coherent solution at the end, I think is amazing in and of itself. And we have to make sure that everyone understands the goals. We have a common understanding of the work. To
Yeah.
make sure that we divide it most effectively and efficiently so that we get the most value out of all the resources. We're always limited by kind of time and resources.
Right.
If I'm going to spend to create a new product, I'm expecting some return on that investment on that capital.
Hmm.
The spend is based on how many people, how long is this going to take? What am I actually trying to, what are the features that are most important for me to generate? And then being able to iterate on that and improve it over time. And those are problems that, yeah, that's what modern business is.
Right. I think that you touched on something really important about um it being like a uniquely human thing to ask like why we're doing a specific thing and to think about like everyone involved in the work. And yeah, that's a great lesson to take away.
Yeah.
So just to wrap it up, is there anything about AI that you've changed your mind on?
I wouldn't say that I've changed. I think I'm, continuously open to exploring different use cases and
Mhm.
understanding how we can, just like any other tool.
Yeah.
Um, so I might be more conservative on my estimates of how quickly this will transform or fundamentally change our day-to-day life. But there's usefulness and value that we're generating from these tools with the right
Right.
types of use cases.
Right.
So I think it's a constant challenge to stay abreast of what's actually happening in the space and kind of where this is going and how the tools will continue to develop. I'm interested to see kind of the long term where this lands in terms of the cost associated with these types of tools versus the value that they generate. There are a lot of things that we can do that we don't necessarily want to do or need to do because there's more effective ways to do that. It goes back to something you asked about earlier and misconceptions about data science. I think a lot of people think we've fundamentally are using a lot of knowledge that we've had for decades.
Mhm.
So it's not like we discovered something brand new, in the last couple of years that opened up the floodgates.
Right.
What happened is we've had gradual advancements in technology and processing. We can do very quickly a lot of math on large sets of data that we could have had these LLMs and Gen AI tools when I was a toddler, but the compute wasn't there,
Yeah.
or we didn't have the data to train them on. They're recognizing patterns based on everything else they've consumed and seen. So what
Right.
happened about 20 years ago, we all voluntarily put everything we know online in a digital form that makes it easy to consume. So
Right.
now that we've got all the data and the processing power is fast enough that we can do this at scale, we're
Hmm.
seeing the floodgates of these new types of tools. But that's not, some revolutionary new discovery or advancement on the math or probability side.
Right.
Um, we'll see kind of where this goes in the longer term. We try to find the balance between what use cases drive more value or make us more effective and efficient. What are these things good at? Where are the things that humans are still going to be better,
Hmm.
or the judgment, or the subject matter expertise, or decision process on what choices that we want to make, or things are in a
Right.
gray area. That's where we'll always be in the loop for those types of
Yeah,
people.
for
So,
sure. And about the use cases, right?
hmm
It's not a complete like silver ticket, like you said, or like a
Yeah.
black box, because especially for prompts, like so much of it is in the human's hands, like how you word a question, it really affects like the output of the LLM.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
yeah, definitely. It's not outsourcing everything to the AI, I
No,
guess.
I think
Yeah.
like it's incumbent here at the higher ed level and figuring out like how do we train people for what a good use case looks like. I think,
Yeah.
and I read a lot. Everyone's concerned, well, you're just not going to learn anything because you're going to have the AI do your work. And that's fine because that's what's going to happen to the whole world. I think it's really important that you both understand the limitations and what these tools are actually doing,
Yeah,
that you can make more informed choices for when it might be appropriate to use or it might be useful or helpful versus it creates something that looks nice, but the results are not meaningful.
for
Uh,
sure. Yeah.
there are a lot of things that you can generate through these Gen AI tools. They sure look nice until you do a deeper, more nuanced read and say, this doesn't make sense or this doesn't answer my question. This is not what we were trying to do. Right? That's the human piece. And I don't see that changing in the near future.
Yeah, I'm completely with you on that. Yeah, humans give it meaning, I think. Uh, and yeah, those are all the questions we have for today. Jamie, thank you so much for joining us. Like
Well, thank you.
that was such an insightful conversation.
Yeah, it was
But
great.
yeah, so thank you to everyone for tuning into this episode of AI IRL. Submit any questions you have for our experts through the Google form on our website, that I will also link in the episode description. But yeah, make sure to follow our podcast and join us on the journey for to uncovering the ever-changing role of AI in creating a better future for all. See you next time.